the point is, it doesn't matter which term we use. We do have an understanding that this digital world that many of us are taking for granted, there will be a segment of the population that for some reason, they're not part of it. And I think that might be the best way to ask the question about, so what and why do we care about that part that's not included, right?
Yeah. I mean, let's go there. Why should we care? So we're in a modern world. I mean, I've got an iPhone, I've got loads of computers, I've got an iPad, I've got internet. I'm okay. And I'm sure that everybody who is watching or listening to this was okay, right? So why should we care about the people who are not this side of the glass, as it were?
If I can offer a bit of context in terms of society as a whole, you can relate to the fact that, when we talk about industrial revolutions, we've seen or we've understood what has happened, hundreds of years ago, right? The first generation industrial revolution, from the first to the second, took 100 years. The second to the third took 50 years. The third to the fourth took 25 years. And now, if we are talking about the AI, it's less than 5-10 years. So that is one of the reasons why, whether we like it or not, we're now in this part of society where we call it the digital world, the digital economy. So unless you are not a human on this earth, how can we not be part of this digital world? But having said that, I think one of the things that will be good for us to discuss today is, what does it mean about being digital? Is it a binary concept, or is it more complicated than just that?
And who are we talking about here? Before we talk about what exclusion and inclusion means, typically, who are people who are excluded? And are we talking here about the UK or Europe or the world?
This is a global issue. So if a simple measure of being digital, right, because I think these people can relate to this, is whether you have access to the internet or not. Would you be surprised if I say to you that globally 30% of the world's population do not have access to the internet? Would you be surprised or
Yes
shocked?
and no. Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I can imagine there would be, and I'm going to really generalize a lot here, but I can imagine there will be some places maybe in, I don't know, Africa or somewhere where the tribes are so nomadic and they live off the land, and, maybe out in the deserts of Saudi Arabia, they're there with their camels, and they don't need the internet and they're probably not connected. So 30% doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So I think numbers do matter, right? So if you refer to that segment of the population, I don't think that is a large population, right? If you compare to the rest of the world. So the point here is that if this is where the world is going and it's about catering to the masses, to the majority, then if we assume that the digital world is here today, 30% sounds like it's a big gap from achieving being a digital participant, right?
And if
And
we
that is
brought,
the issue.
yeah, and if we brought it closer to home, if we think UK, for
Mm.
example, something that people here in the UK can relate to, who typically is digitally excluded here in the UK?
So if again, if we use the emergence of the internet, and therefore this is how we get to understand about digital to be an example, you'll find that, I remember when I started my career at that time, it felt like it was a generational thing, meaning that it's a matter of time before you get some people on it. And it's also a generational thing that you say you just leave some people behind because maybe it's not for them. So that's one way to look at it. And therefore, because of that, there's this perception that, you know what, there are people of a certain age, of a certain generation, let's just forget about them, right?
Mm.
Because it's not designed for them, which is why the tech profession, we use this concept of digital personas, where we design based on this principle of 80% means is good enough for everybody, right? So it's a 80% represent a majority. But if you look at where we are today, as the pace of technology keeps evolving faster and faster, the NHS is a good example where they are now trying to push everybody to use the NHS app to make a doctor's appointment. That's one example. Another example would be, imagine if you're trying to park your car today, and it's not about age anymore, right? It's about trying to park your car. And unless you have connectivity, unless you have a device, unless you have the app, there's no way you can park your car. So tell me, are we potentially excluding people for some reason they are not able to achieve that?
It's interesting you say that because, and I'm sure we will come on to the demographics of it a lot more. I guess you're immediately you begin to think of maybe elderly people because they're just not they've not had the depth of experience that you and I have had. You know, we've lived our lives on tech, but if you're above a certain age, maybe you didn't get into there. But even I went to, as it happens, I had an appointment at the hospital, went into the car park. I'm used to using Ringo because everyone has Ringo, but they changed the app, and it was an app I'd never seen before. And I got my phone out, and there was another chap standing there, and together it took us more than 10 minutes to sign up for this new application and try and pay for parking. And as a result, I mean, I know that I was late for my appointment, and it did make me think there will be some people who don't have the mental capacity, the experience, or whatever it is that I have because of my experience with technology, who at that moment would not be able to overcome that problem.
Right. And I hope you can see, a simple thing that many of us are taking for granted today. It does affect us. I have the same challenge too, right? And this is why this issue is much bigger than just an age related issue.